business model that prioritizes charity and sustainability truly thrive in today's world? In this insightful episode of GoodViral, we hear the remarkable story of the Unbridled Group and Stan Bullis, who is the CEO and founder. Unbridled has over 30 companies and is still growing. They have defied conventional business wisdom by financially dedicating high percentages to charity and large portions of gross earnings to reinvesting in its employees. This bold and philanthropic approach is called the 20-20-60. It has not only earned Unbridled recognition as a socially conscious leader, but has also played a pivotal role in their resilience during challenging times, like the 2020 pandemic. We're glad to have you. Welcome to the conversation.
Every business organization out there is sort of a separate entity to us as individuals, and we as individuals, most people, do have the desire or the caring enough to say, hey, I really want to help others and do good things in my life, but a lot of times, the organizations or the entities sort of go on in sort of a neutral fashion, it's like we need to make money so that we can support the people. But you guys from the very beginning, pretty much decided, hey, our organization is going to be about giving back, and we're going to build it that way. And so that part of it, when I heard about that the first time, I was like, wow, that's really, really cool. That's like an amazing, what I think it's like an amazing model that others can be inspired by. And, they can, I imagine, make changes within their own organizations, or if they're thinking about starting or developing an organization, they can take some of these ideas to it. So that's why we were so excited to have you on. So can you tell us, just to start off with, why does your organization exist? Can you take us back to the origin stories a little bit?
Yeah. So the origin stories actually start with, growing up overseas. And so I spent 6 years in Africa, 3 years Sierra Leone, 3 years Liberia, 3 years in Brazil, 3 years in Uruguay, 3 years in Germany. And so I kind of grew up with a multicultural background and multi sort of socioeconomic, classes and and I've always had a heart for giving back. I mean, as a kid, leaving the restaurant, I would slide the servers, an extra $5 because I felt like my dad wasn't tipping him enough. And so,
strange kid, right?
Yeah, I just always wanted to help people out. And so, the genesis of the company was, I had a pretty great success story, from 16, starting as a dishwasher. By 29, I'm president of a company. And so when I had a chance to start my own company, I was just answering this question. There were two really. Would it be good business if fundamentally inside the company could do good by doing well? And then the second was, what if companies do what the government was supposed to do and won't, and actually take care of their constituency? And so that just, from there birthed this idea that, we were going to give our first 20% of our profits to charity, and we were going to store up 1/5, 20%. We were going to keep that in the company. And then the balance, 60%, we were going to pay out to our shareholders. And that later became known as a business of generosity. So it's generous to give 20% of your net profits. The result of that is, it's like the law of attraction, right? If you live your life generously, then generous things happen to you. And so because, we've got 388 team members that are contributing to that generosity, I believe that they experience generosity in other forms in their lives because of that, law of attraction. Storing up 1/5, I had an experience as a kid where, I worked for someone that didn't manage cash flow well, and got into a situation where we were missing payroll because he overspent. And long story short, we had this strategy that's also generous to protect the company, and it's also generous to make sure that you're storing up portions of your profit for rainy seasons. And that's a later story about what happened when COVID hit us. That generosity, that storing up 1/5 really helped us navigate, COVID. and then the balance 60% is generous to pay your shareholders. And so that's the generosity model. We call it the 20-20-60 model.
That's interesting. So, and so when you went forward and you decided to sort of create that, and this is, still, even though, like the more I talk to you and the more I learn about what it is you guys are doing, it's almost like the more questions I have. And I think that, I think that this is the part that it's really tough for people to get their head around, is that it seems like so many businesses are just struggling just to make ends meet, to make a profit, just to be a normal functioning business. And some do really well, but the vast majority is struggling. And of course, we know that. So in the beginning, when you decided, I mean, how do you look at starting a business and saying, hey, we can afford to do this, we can afford to give back this much and still turn a profit? I mean, can you kind of tell me the mentality behind that?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds hard, and I'm sure your listeners are like, well, I don't know how I would do that in my business. When you're starting from zero, 20% of nothing is nothing. So, and you're kind of drinking your own Kool-Aid, like, we're going to go do this. And so we established it. And the truth is, we struggled for the first 10 years. And we struggled like most businesses would, cash flow and getting profits. And then when you get profits, gosh, you're going to give 20% away. But what we were learning in that process was it was unlocking some sort of, quantum physics that allowed good things to happen to us as well. And then we were watching, and it was like little things, like maybe we won a piece of business that we shouldn't have, and we could sort of trace it back to that, doing good initiative. Or on the other hand, we got out of a deal that was really bad without lots of, legal fees. And really, I mean, there was a moment in time that was really profound, and that's that we were really struggling, and we were still honoring that principle even when it hurt, and we had a chance to buy a partner out, and the partner was part of the reason that there was this big struggle. We weren't aligned, and out of nowhere, an old family friend from 30 years ago sent us $500,000 to have that acquisition happen. And so again, that's sort of that, law of attraction. If you do good things happen to you as well.
So other people are recognizing what you're doing, and they believe in it, and therefore, and you're breeding a level of trust and a level of credibility as you're doing it, and you're profoundly touching your people when, we're not just shipping money, abroad necessarily. We're actually engaged in the endeavors that we're doing, like, working down the street here with the Denver Dream Center. We write in our there's a whole volunteer policy inside of our company that allows people to exchange pay for community service, and you're creating, you're giving the opportunity to build better citizens too, which is, and then you start looking, like, we're on the corner of Grant and 11th in downtown Denver, 2 blocks from the Capitol. And then you start going, well, the homeless encampment across the street, well, there are people too, right? And how do we help them? Or, so it begins to just sort slowly, like, your sphere of influence, the ripple effect just keeps rippling. And now you're beginning to mobilize. Instead of 2 people trying to do good, you're mobilizing 400. So do you find that that because of the principles that you all have, I mean, that I imagine that you are attracting people to the company that are like-minded? I mean, when people hear about you, you probably have people sort of excited about the idea of working for you or with you. Do you find that that's is it something that, in other words, I guess what I'm thinking is, do people sort of just come for a regular job when they approach you, and then they sort of buy into the ideas because it's what you all are doing? Or do you find more that that you tend to attract the people who are also sort of like you, those generous people who just want to, maybe just want to give back. I mean, what do you feel like is the kind of people that you attract?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think there's a couple of answers to that. One is that, there's been a cultural shift generationally, from, the silent generation until now. And the answer is yes. The generation, Gen Z, if you will, purpose is really important for their vocational effort, right? They want to actually connect with the mission of the company and connect with what the company's doing both internally and externally. So yes, and it's way more than just checking a box. Oh, they do that. We're asking them to actually be engaged in the things that we're doing, which means that you better have your values in alignment, because engagement can look in a lot of different ways. And then we're, us as a company, we also want people that want to be engaged. And so there's, the interview process is probably 7 interviews long. Because we're not just interviewing, we say we don't hire positions, we hire people. And so, because people activate new businesses for us. And so, as entering into the company is, it's a really healthy exchange of ideas and dreams, and how do we give back? And so all of that fits in, and that's all part of, generosity. It's generous for a company to want to know where a person that's in an interview, where they want to end their life, right?
Sure.
Because we think that we're supposed to help them get there. So we're not hiring for a position. We're inviting a person into the family.
Yeah, sure. Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Can you share with us maybe some stories, some examples of what you're talking about? For example, maybe something specifically that you can think of where as a result of the decision to create a company this way, as a result of what it is that you do, that you've had some kind of direct impact that the stories can, or a story that our listeners can relate to.
Yeah, I have so many, but let me pick one that would really sort of express it. So it's a Saturday evening, phone rings. This young man named Jonathan Wield calls me. I don't know who he is. And he's like, "Hey, I've been trying to work for your company for 18 months. And now I have, a lead for you, a piece of business for you." So he's already done research. He hasn't been able to get any traction. He calls me. I interview him, and in the, so I go meet with him on a Saturday, which was tricky with the family and everything. And I'm like, "Hey, Jonathan, it sounds like, you're an entrepreneur to me. Like what prevents you from working for us for a couple of years and then starting your own thing?" And he said, "Well, Stan, that's exactly my plan." So he leans in honesty. And so that, my response is, then it's my job to give you so much opportunity that you'll never want to leave. And so Jonathan starts, we create a job. We don't even have a job, but I know that he's supposed to be in our care, and we're supposed to be in his care. And so he starts as a program manager, marketing program manager, just as like a placeholder job. And over the next 6 months, which we hold loosely, I noticed that he starts solving financial problems for me. And so everything he and I'm like, this guy's brilliant financially. And we had remodeled the office that you see now behind you. It's a historic mansion built in 1892. And one day he comes in, he's like, "I don't have anything to do." I'm like, "Jonathan, go find something to do." And so he starts researching historic tax credits, and he winds up securing us $920,000 in historic tax credits, just from who he was as an identity in a company where he had freedom. Well, today he's 30. I think he's 33. he's the managing partner of our wealth management company. And so that's an example. There wasn't a job description, but there was an identity that we could believe in. We bring him into the company. We begin to watch how he navigates through the company. We see an ultimate contribution from him. He starts making us a lot of money. I mean, 920,000 is a lot of money on a one-time thing,
right?
Which ultimately creates a real estate portfolio for us. And then he lands where he's supposed to be, starting a company doing wealth management with us.
Interesting. So this is basically just somebody that you just believed in from the beginning. It sounds like. I mean, once you really knew who he was and that he existed.
Yeah. But that's true and this is a big order. That's true for everybody that starts at the company in the interview process. You know, I look at Scott, started out in high school. He's now chief commercial officer. Tim was a creative director. Now he's chief solutions officer. Diane was a meeting planner. Now she's chief people and possibilities officer. And so, and maybe, I guess what I'm saying is, in everybody, there's an identity and a solutions orientation. And the supposition is, if a company could create a system or ecosystem that brought out the real identity in somebody instead of just a job, then you're going to create happier, longer tenured employees, and you're going to do amazing things. I mean, we've grown from one company to 27 companies doing this, all doing the 20-20-60.
Right. Wow, that's really amazing. That's really amazing. So, and then, so what do you, maybe you can share with us now, for example, something that you're working on that really excites you, or really, there's always something in our hands that gives us a little bit of energy, right? So what are you working on these days that really excites you?
I have two things. One that excites me and one that scares the shit out of me.
Okay.
So different forms of excitement, I guess, but both thrilling. When we got to about 15 companies, we started realizing, like, maybe we're writing a new business prototype. Doing good by doing well, and we started just wondering, like, if it can work with a group of companies, could it work localized in a city? And so down about 2.5 hours southwest of here is this little prison town called Canyon City. And we went in and we bought 7 historic buildings all on Main Street. And we were paying like $30 a square foot. And our mission was our mission there is to purvey hope through hospitality. Because of the statistics around, there's 19 prisons in Fremont County. And so the statistics around mortality rates. And so we wanted to create an alternate economy in hospitality by purveying hope and giving unreasonable hospitality, we call it. And so we buy these 7 buildings. We're in the process of restoring these buildings. One of them's a hotel, a boutique hotel. And so we restore them because we own the building, and then we open up businesses inside of them and operate the businesses. And so we've taken, the average hospitality worker in Canyon City used to live below the poverty level. They would make about $22,000 a year, while our servers are in the $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year. And so we're beginning to turn. So that was sort of the imagining, could it work for a city? And could we, or hyper localized? And when we moved into Canyon City, there was about 40% vacancy on storefronts on Main Street. And now there's about 15% vacancy. And now the facades are being, so now we're looking at that sort of doing good by doing well. Is it infectious? Can it jump to next door and next door and next door? And we're like, it looks like it's happening. And then the one that scares the shit out of me is there's a development here in Denver. It's called Loretto Heights, and it's a 115,000 square foot historic building. it's known to be the high ground in Canyon City, or not Canyon City, in Denver, Colorado. So it's one of, if not the highest point. And it's this beautiful old building that is just really ravaged. It needs a lot of love. But I mean, that's probably a $50 million project. But we would like to take everything that we've learned, acquire that space, and create an entrepreneurial center that is designed to launch little businesses like this that do good by doing well, and sort of create an incubator and a replicator of these values and principles to see, I'm 58. So now, I'm thinking in terms about like how farther, not faster. Right. So it's the opposite of tech world. Like, how do we set this up for generations? Because we can actually begin to cure some level of poverty if we do this well.
Now, so that's interesting. So let me ask you about that then. So you're looking at basically creating the next generation. I imagine you've already sort of started that within the company, the generation of people that when you're not there, that this whole idea is carrying forward. So what are some of the ideas you might say if it takes hold and does what you want it to do? What are some of the things that you hope will happen as a result of that?
Right. Well, I'll bring it back to Jonathan, and then I'll answer your question. So when Jonathan started the wealth management company, he cracked this code around life insurance being self-funded and creating massive death benefits behind each of these businesses by using cash flow to set up banking systems. It's called infinite banking. So the first thing that I would say is that behind all these businesses are large policies that are set up as banks that leave a death benefit, and that death benefit is beneficial because that's the transfer vehicle for the business to be paid out from the patriarchs and matriarchs and transfer to the next generation. So here's that kid from that interview all those years ago. Now he cracks the code of how. So it's not a function.
Can you? I think I catch what you're saying there, but can you explain that in simple terms for our listener?
All right. Simple terms are, I'm going to just use $100,000. I have $100,000 of cash flow coming in our company. Instead of leaving it in the traditional banking system, I buy a life insurance policy. But I buy a life insurance policy that has a very low premium on the death benefit, so that I can put as much as I can in what's called cash value. That cash value grows uninterrupted for life, between 4% and 6%. And I do this year over year. Now I have access to the cash flow. I have access to the cash value whenever I need it, whenever I want it. But aside, it's growing this death benefit behind the scenes that you can't see. And the cash flow is throwing off so much interest, it's paying for the death benefit. So the death benefit's free. So now when I die, as an example, there will be out of the death benefit, there'll be a giant injection of cash into the business, which allows the business to pay off debts, but mostly to buy us out of it so that they can assume it.
They being
the next generation.
Okay.
So my other business partner. So it's called a buy-sell. So it's a self-liquidating asset that transfers the business out of my ownership into theirs, and then they start that process all over again. And so you're looking at sort of generational windfalls that you're paying off real estate paying. So we say we're building hundreds of companies designed to last hundreds of years,
right?
It's all built into the sort of financial model. And so go back to your original question, because I lost it because we got a little, I get excited about this stuff.
Well, no, it's really interesting. Like what you brought up and talked about there is really interesting. No, but the original question was, so what would you like to see happen in the future?
So imagine this. Imagine if your product was means and methods. So if people bought an Unbridled company's services for our value system, and then the way we conduct business and the way we have businesses of generosity. So that means their experience layer, how they experience us, is a unique set of values that cultivate growth, that are innovative solutions, that are inspired generosity, and then the brand Unbridled, the brand promises that those behaviors are going to continue. Right? So that's the brand promise. You'll like working with us. We're going to be fast, smart, and honest and transparent, and you're going to like it. Now, we're not going to be ever held to a product or service, because our product is our. So what does that mean tangibly? Out of our 27 companies, we're in 17 different unique business industries. So we're not. So when you ask like the future, what does it look like? I think the future looks like starting businesses inside of the identity of the people that come to us. And their identity paired with our value system will create generational wealth.
So let me see you tell me if I got this right. Okay. So if I'm starting a business or trying to follow some of your ideas and take this into the business world, I'm going to basically collect around me a group of people. And when I do, I'm going to, as I start working with those people, I'm going to wait and see what it is that they have as sort of special, unique characteristics, each one of those. And then once I can identify some of those things, then between us, we're going to decide what kind of business we really have or really are creating. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And that's what you've been doing that successfully for how long now?
22 years.
22 years. And you've got a system built in place, basically, that's going to ensure that really there's no reason that these entities ever need to go out of business, because they're always going to be paying back into the company upon the death of each individual. Yeah.
And I can quantify that a little further for you. Mm-hmm. You know, we track things like adjacent opportunity. So let's say these are all real examples. We started as a meeting planning company. We're buying $7 million worth of travel from somebody else. Employee comes into our sphere. Reggie would be an example, and she's qualified to run a travel company. So we start our own. So there's adjacent opportunity. Then we realize that all these events we're doing, they need light, sound, gear. So we start our own production company because someone came in our sphere, right? Then we realize that that they need creative agencies and screenwriters. So we do that. Then we realize this is actually a really good example because it'll tie everything back. Then we realize, they need content, so we start a content agency. And then we realize, they need swag, so we start a swag company. So now our live event portfolio is 5 different companies that encompass the entire, anything that happens at an event, we do, from travel to food to hotels to, right? So now we got this ecosystem that all has different partners, but they're interconnected. And so now imagine we're storing up 1/5. This is actually a really good example. And COVID hits, right? We're doing $100 million of these events a year. We took $50 million worth of cancellations the very first week when COVID hit. And so we're all like, holy shit, what just happened? Right. But we've been storing up 1/5 all these years. So we're sitting on a couple $1 million at a nest egg, and we get everybody together and we're like, we can respond now, not react to this. So our response was, let's create an online digital platform that's a look live, like it's not a Zoom call, it's virtually live. So we're doing a live production like you would, but it's just virtual with back of house. So we take 3 months, we write all of that. we launch it in June, and by the following March, we'd done almost 200 Look Live virtual events. We were running virtual events 24/7 like that. And so now we're all these wheels, these ecosystems that are interconnected. So what happened was the diversification was so powerful. Our meeting planning business and travel fell off the map, but everybody needed the production. Everybody needed the media stuff, the content stuff. And then they wanted to reach their people. So the gifts. So these three other companies took off while these died. And so you're starting to have like this ecosystem that some companies will do better and then some, and it will ebb and flow as sort of the seasons of the marketplace ebb and flow, but they're all connected.
And during this process, during everything you just described, what happened to the people that were working with the organization, your group?
We kept 80% of our workforce. All through COVID. We just had to reassign and redeploy. And then so it's an incredible. And then in our generosity, our generosity model was we set up a 200,000 COVID assistance fund to help people that were in our sphere of influence, like people that most people would forget about. The roadies, the grips, the people that are behind the scenes that were independent contractors that just got left behind. So we set up in all of that, we set up a fund to say, hey, we know you're hurting. Here's a fund. Here's a way to access it. Yeah.
That's really interesting. So, So let me tell you what I'm taking from this, because what I'm realizing as you're talking is that, of course, it's difficult for me to understand, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners are also wondering. But also, on the other hand, what you're explaining is something that you've been working on for more than 20 years. So it's not really supposed to be easy to understand, because it's sort of going contrary to traditional business models, right? But what I'm getting in general is that. We don't know in 5-10 years what's going to happen with technology and with the changing world. But what we do know is that people are going to be the ones that are going to be running the companies. And so what you're basically doing is you're saying, hey, look, one way or another, we're going to make it work. We just have to create the right kind of organization with people who have, as you say, what would you say are the main qualities of an individual when you're going through the 7 interview process? What kind of people are you saying, hey, these are the kind of people that are our kind of people?
Well, it depends on where you are in the interview process, right? So it would be dumb to say skills aren't a part of it. Of course, skills are a minor part. You've got to be able to get on a computer, Excel. You can't hire a graphic designer that doesn't know Illustrator, right? And but my job in the interview process are questions like this. These are actually the questions. Damian, I want to know that your head and your heart are connected, right? And why? Because we're in the hospitality industry, but it's mostly project management. I need to know that you can feel, and I need to know that you can think. So that's just a varying series of questions, just to see how is that. The second question is will you add value to our culture? So that's probably a different language for sort of diversity. Like, you adding value means you're bringing something unique that we don't have into our business, right? Really important, because if we're all thinking the same, it's just an echo chamber and we're not going to solve anything. So we want you to think and feel differently. It's really important. The third one is, will we add value to your life? Like, what are we bringing to the table that's going to make your life better? Then the fourth thing is, where does Damian want to go? Like, when you're dreaming 7 years from now, where do you think your life is going to be? And then I have to think about, is this the right place to get you there? Like, and ask that question honestly. Like, are we really the best place for you to get where you're going? Right. And then the last is just an exercise of imagining you inside the organization and how those interactions happen. And so it's somewhat ethereal. but we've been doing it for so long. It's very substantive.
Wow, that's really interesting. Okay, so, well, I think let me ask you this. So, how can our listeners, I mean, if they're curious about what it is that you guys are doing and want to sort of understand what it is we talked about more, want to try to model some of their business ideas around what you guys are sort of the example that you're setting, where is the preferred place that they can follow you or track you? What is there, a social media or a website, or what? And in what way can they connect with you guys to try to learn more about how it is that they can follow what you're doing?
Yeah. So that's a complicated question. So here's what I would say to that. One, best thing to do is reach out to me personally on my email. sbullis@unbridled.com. You can follow the Unbridled channel, but the ecosystem has so many facets. I believe that we're evangelizing a different kind of business model. And so that means that we're sort of open source. I'll share as much or as little. And I want people to adapt as much or as little. But the good news is we've actually been tracking this for 20 years. And so I feel like if I can give someone the 7 steps to adjacent opportunity, we can, talk to people about the employee journey. I mean, there's so I can be a good resource. And so that would be the best thing. What we're not doing or going to do, I think, is create this sort of egocentric campaign to say, hey, look at what we're doing. I think that would steal the heart and the intent. The heart and intent is we want to be hyper local. We want to care about the people in our neighborhoods. And as people are connected to us through maybe stuff like this, happy to talk to them. But I don't want some big campaign out there saying, "Look at us," because it just feels like it would rob the intent.
Yes. Yeah. Well, what I'm thinking, and again, this is the last thing, just to is I'm imagining that I mean, myself, I've been in the business world for a while myself, and I know that I have. There's our listeners have varying degrees of experience or desire. It may be just simply that some of the ideas that we're talking about are things that they'd like to talk to their bosses about or introduce into their company. But so many of the things I think that you all are doing, they sound almost fictional, like idealized, like it's like if you could do everything the way you really want to, this is how you would do it, and as you said, you struggled for 10 years, but you finally figured out how to make it work. But now it sounds like you're making it really work in a big way. And what I really like is the fact that you all, you decided you wanted to do it a certain way and you stuck to it. And now you believe that it's duplicatable and that others can do it. So really, I think that's the big question is the next step really in my mind is how do our listeners, how do other people see what you're doing and start really duplicating that? And how do you, I guess this is the last question for you really, is how do you want to see this, what it is that you all are doing being duplicated out there in the world?
Yeah. I mean, I think that we talked about a lot of topics in this thing. I mean, we covered, right. So I would break it down probably depending on what people would want to hear into sort of micro topics. Maybe it's just business of generosity, which is the 20-20-60, right? Maybe we're doing a session. Maybe we stand up a session on, cultures of authenticity. That's where crafting your corporate values, exists. That's where how you interview, and then the last one would be collaboration of destinies, which would be what does it look like to harness the power of your team members? What does it look like to create legacy models inside of your business? And so I would look from your listeners, and it could be even through another podcast with you if you wanted to do that. What's the a group of them may just want to hear the banking model, right?
Yeah, sure.
And we could stand up just on the banking model. So I would look to distill it down into some micro topics that we can do a little deeper dive.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks so much. Well, listen, we're going to say thank you so much, and again, our a lot of information to take in. Like you said, we did cover a lot of topics, but we're gonna hopefully take what you've been sharing with us, and I think it's inspirational. That's exactly what I heard from the very beginning, and I'm even more inspired now, to be honest. And what I love is that, of course, you guys are really saying, hey, look, there's no one way that things have to be done in the business world, and I'm hoping that that governments are able to take on a lot of these ideas too. I mean, really, in the future. I think that people are going to have to open things up and do things in a more generous way if humanity is really going to be successful long term. I really believe that if our planet will be so. So thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to the GoodViral podcast and being part of the conversation. If you are inspired by this episode, go to our website at goodviral.org, where you can find resources and listings from the episode to continue good efforts.
Like, comment, and share this episode to any or all of your social media channels. It's really easy to take a small action, and maybe you'll inspire a big result.
When good goes viral, the world gets better.